I just recorded for about 40 minutes and I decided I really didn't like the video because I was being too neurotic during the video. My neighbor was coming in and going out. Earlier, she had a screaming argument with her boyfriend that I could hear, and it was just making me a little bit nervous, and it was affecting the video. And then I thought, you know what? I don't really know exactly what's entertaining to people. I don't know exactly why people listen to these videos. And I don't mean that like, bro, why are you even listening? I don't mean it like that. I just mean like everyone has different motivations and reasons for things. Like some people might think, well, I feel sorry for this guy. I'm going to listen to his latest episode of I Hate My Life or whatever. Or they might be entertained by my style of presentation or whatever. But the thing is, like, it gets to be a certain point where during the video and I'm talking about, I'm stumbling over my words and I'm saying, I'm nervous because my neighbor just came in and she had a huge argument with her boyfriend. Like, I don't want that to become the video. So I just decided, like, I'm going to restart this video and talk about something that I observed earlier, having nothing to do with my neighbor, who is now home. And part of the thing is, like, I thought she had left, and so I had privacy. I don't really feel like I have privacy when she's there. It's specifically her. The other one, I don't really think she can hear me. And maybe she can, maybe she has her ear cupped to the wall. I don't know. But anyway, I'm just going to try to power through and just record this and I don't think people are listening to me. That's not what it is. I think that they can hear me. That's what bothers me. Why is that guy in his apartment talking to himself? That's what I would imagine that they might think. Anyway, so I was thinking about this term, partner. Very confusing, and intentionally so. And what I'm talking about is the replacement of the term significant other for a gender-neutral way of talking about your love interest or the person that you're having sex with currently. I don't know. However you want to say it. Now, so leftists want to replace boyfriend or whatever with partner, or even your wife or your husband, I think. They want the term partner to be used. Now, I've wondered about this, and because it's so confusing, significant other does not mean the person that you work with, that you're doing a coding project with, to make a game. You wouldn't use the word significant. You wouldn't use the term significant other. Oh yeah, he's my significant other. We're working on this game together. It's going to be a Quake-style game, but he's kind of like the coding guy. I'm not really that smart, but I'm doing like all the narrative stuff and like the art. You wouldn't call that person a significant other. You would call him a partner. He's my partner. We're working on a game. Now, with this adoption of the word partner to mean a romantic partner, it confuses everything. Again, this is intentional, but I wanted to explain why I think, it only occurred to me just today, why I think a lot of people want to use the word partner. Okay, so people aren't going to like this, by the way, but what I'm going to say has nothing to do with not liking anyone or being bigoted in any way. It's just my little thought about it, because, by the way, this term has vexed me so much that I've gone online and asked. I've gone on Reddit and asked, like, what's with this partner thing? Why can't we just say significant other? Because that's gender neutral. So you've already got a term there, But I guess it implies maybe the opposite sex. I don't know. But so what I got from Reddit, so I'll just explain, like, I asked on Reddit, and the word asked is so awkward, because I've just talked about this before, but I'll just say this quickly. People make fun of black people, and people make fun of for some reason, at one of the jobs I had, almost everyone said axe. And it actually got kind of frustrating to me, but I never corrected anyone because they knew that they were saying it wrong, I think. So it wasn't like up to me to like be the beneficent, grammarian or whatever and correct their mistake. And it would have made me look like an asshole anyway. But so it's awkward because it's very difficult to say that word and not just say asked. I asked him a question. ASSED. That's what it sounds like, at least for me. But then I have slight issues with enunciation anyway, partly because of this problem that I have. But anyway, so yeah, I asked Reddit about this. Oh, but what I was going to say is like people make fun of people for using axed. But it's like in a way that actually kind of makes sense because at least you're using every syllable in the word, even though you're reversing two of the letters, at least you're actually pronouncing the whole thing, So on some weird level, it actually makes logical sense for people to say axed. Anyway, so yeah, I was on Reddit and I said, what's with the term partner? Why can't we use significant other? Like, what's the problem? And so I got a couple of responses where it was like, what's the problem? Why is there such a problem with just using a word? Why do you have a problem? So I got a little bit of that, but I got more of people actually responding to the question, which was, I was grateful for. Because if it's Reddit and the politics of Reddit, you're going to get people that are immediately defensive because that's their thing, is to say partner instead of significant. This is not loud enough. Instead of significant other. And so I don't remember everything all the answers that I got, but the main thing that I got was basically, to the extent that there was a real answer, was basically you don't understand how lazy people are. Partner is shorter, so people want to say partner. And I was thinking like, that doesn't make sense to me. And okay, that's fine, but now we've still got this problem of confusing the word partner so that every time someone refers to his or her partner, I have to think, okay, are you talking about romantic partner or are you talking about a business partner of some kind, So I was watching this guy on TikTok and this morning. And I got up and I realized that I was going to make I don't normally cook, but I decided to make a grilled cheese and sorry, one sec. Yeah, grilled cheese and egg sandwich, whatever you call it. And then I realized I was looking for the pan, and then I remembered. I really didn't feel like washing I didn't feel like doing any dishes. People that know me know this. I really don't like doing dishes, and it's not a laziness thing. It's kind of like a water everywhere and water on my hands, and I have to wash my hands after. And anyway, but I decided to do that. And so I'm looking for the pan. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I forgot. I put the pan in the dishwasher before Joey visited me, because I didn't feel like washing it. And the funny thing is, I cleaned the whole fucking apartment, I've talked about this, before he visited me. But I did not do the dishes. And that might sound kind of ironic, but when he came, there were dishes in the sink. But he didn't care. It was not like we were cooking, So anyway, I had to wash the pan. So while I'm doing the dishes, to do that, I started watching this guy on TikTok. He was live, right? So he's sort of going on about, he's like, I have ADHD, and I also have OCD. And then I'm thinking, okay, here we go. It's one of these people who's talking about how he's disabled. And I think that's what he said, actually. He was like, I'm disabled. I don't remember exactly, but the point is like, then he started talking about so yeah, well, my cat's very excited and now she's running around, which is fine. It's good for her. So anyway, I'm watching this guy who looks like someone from The Kids in the Hall, and I even commented as I was watching it. I commented that to him. I said, "You look like," because somebody said that he looked like Stephen King, and see, now I'm just getting off on a tangent. Who gives a shit what he looked like? But somebody said he looked like Stephen King, and I thought, yeah, it's a little bit of a stretch, but okay. But I was like, no, but he looks like the guy from Kids in the Hall. And then he said, who, Dave Foley? And I was like, I forgot even about that fucking name, but I was like, no, it's not Dave Foley. It's like the short dude. And he's got kind of like a square face, you know? But I don't remember what his name is. I don't like doing that to people, so I just thought, I'm just going to look it up and then start unpause the recording. So his name is Bruce McCulloch. I don't know how to pronounce that. And to be honest, I'm not even sure I knew that that's what his name was. But the guy that he looked like he looks kind of like Bruce McCulloch with long hair. But the point is, like, he was talking about this experience that he was having, and it was actually kind of interesting, even though I didn't agree with this person's politics in any way, because he was very open about it. He was talking about how when Trump was elected, he basically went through a kind of a mental breakdown. And that he was, I don't know, like, I just feel like if you have a breakdown, that's never happened to me, by the way. I've never felt that way after someone got elected. When, what's-his-face, the former vice president, Joe Biden, when he got elected, I was not happy about it. But there was certainly no sort of breakdown. The idea that someone has a mental breakdown or a nervous breakdown because someone was elected, I feel like if that happens, you've got other problems, you know? But so he's describing that he went through a mental breakdown, and he was very upset that people just kind of went about their lives and pretended that this fascist leader wasn't just elected and all that kind of stuff. And then he started giving this story about how he had gone to prison. And he was at his workplace, and by the way, whenever anyone starts talking about their job or their workplace, at this point of my life, I'm always like, how did they get that job? And like, was it better than my job? And can I get that job? But he really didn't talk about what his job was. All he said was that he was basically in charge of petty cash where he worked, and that he was kind of like their accountant or something, and that he at some point he decided, for whatever reason, that he was going to start stealing money, but that he never intended to steal it, and that he was strapped for cash or something. I don't remember that part and why, but like, he was taking money from either the petty cash or just whatever funds that he had access to that most people working there didn't, because he was the accountant or something along those lines. So he was basically saying, so I started taking money from the workplace with the intention of putting it back, you know. And it's like, that's problem number one, you know. Because, like, if you really wanted to do that, why wouldn't you just ask, and then you don't have to worry about being, either fired or charged with a criminal offense later. But so anyway, he said that he had done this, and that he was found out at some point that he was taking money, and that he wasn't able to replace it. I don't know what made him think he could replace it. I don't remember if he explained that part. So in that sense, if to be fair to him, that wouldn't really be stealing. But at the same time, like, it's illegal, you know? I guess. Is it illegal? Certainly be against policy, most likely. But yeah, so he started taking money from this fund or the petty cash or whatever he had access to at work. And then he was discovered, and I think he was fired, which is, that part is obvious. But he was charged. They called the police, and he had to go to jail. And he was describing this experience, and that he had a cellmate, but he was only in jail for a week, he said, because it was some sort of like, I don't know exactly what the situation was. Oh, I remember what he said, this part. He said he went before a judge and he pled no contest. And he was explaining what no contest means, which was like, you're not saying that you're guilty, but you're basically saying it's more trouble than it's worth to try to deny these allegations and say that you didn't do it, and that you're just going to accept their characterization of the events even though you disagree with it. So, and earlier in the video he was referring to his partner, and it made sense in the context of, like, obviously this guy's on the left, he's talking about how the election of Trump drove him crazy and stuff like this. And then he was talking about the jail part, and I really started to feel sorry for this guy, who's obviously not mentally well, even though he's also at the same time one of these people who's like, look at me, look at how damaged I am, and I have ADHD, and by the way, can we please retire that acronym? If you talk about disabilities and stuff, I don't have a lot of energy. I'm sort of a low, as our president would say, I'm low energy, And so, by the way, I was diagnosed with ADD in high school. I had to go see some sort of a person who determines that. And by the way, the only reason was because I was basically a delinquent and I was failing in my classes. It was sort of like, well, what are we going to do with this person? And we can't just do nothing. And so we're going to send him to get an ADD test, And it was the same reason that I had to start seeing a therapist. It wasn't because I was depressed, but the school, and by the way, I'm not even complaining. I understand what the school was doing, and I understand on some level they were actually trying to be compassionate about it, and they were just sort of doing this thing of like, well, you can't just fail your classes, They were basically taking the perspective of like, we're a school, and we're trying to have everyone here. It was a fancy school. They wanted people to get good grades. So I was making them look bad, and if I didn't end up it was a prep school, so you're expected to go to the best college you can possibly go to for, that's the way it worked back then. I don't really know if things are like that now because of the internet has sort of changed things. I don't know if people are literally trying to like, yeah, I'm going to go to Harvard. Like, I don't really know if that's sort of the goal anymore. And I'm even talking about where I went to school. But they decided that I was depressed because I was getting such bad grades. And in fact, it wasn't depression. It was just I was disgusted with what was going on and my family life, which I didn't realize at the time. But now looking back on it, it was sort of dysfunctional. And my dad really didn't care very much about what my grades were. And it would have helped me if he had sort of shown more interest or something. And I thought it was cool to get bad grades, which is, looking back on it, that's just so stupid. But, that's sort of what I was thinking. I wasn't getting bad grades on purpose. I just wasn't doing my work. So if I wasn't doing my work, I'm going to get bad grades. So they decided that I needed to go to a therapist. But they also decided, I think it was them, that said that I needed to get tested for ADD. And so apparently I tested positive. And so I remember when I took the test, what was I going to say? Yes, it was this lady, and she was like, telling me, she was nice, and she was like, oh, you seem like a good guy, whatever. So then I'm taking the test, and she shows me, I don't remember if it was a picture, but she said, what's wrong with this picture? And what seems out of place? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't really know. I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to say. Like, I don't really see anything wrong with this. And I don't remember what it was. But I'm almost sure that question, where she showed me a picture and I couldn't identify why it was weird or bad or wrong, was what made her diagnose me with ADD, which is strange to me, because what does that have to do with ADD? You know, ADD to me means you're not able to listen to instructions. You get distracted very easily. But my point is, like, ADHD, hyperactivity. The only thing I ever read that made any sense as far as like including hyperactivity in the name was that it might be that it's related to hyperactivity of your brain and not hyperactivity like when a 12 or like an 8-year-old drinks a Coke and then he's climbing off the wall, jumping off the walls or whatever, you know? Like that definition of hyperactivity. It might be like hyperactivity of the brain. So I don't know. I guess that sort of makes sense, but I really don't like that we call it ADHD now. That was another thing that, like, my therapist with. One time I said ADD, and she said it's now considered ADHD. Like, she's correcting me. You know, like, oh, thank you. That's going to help me on my journey to recover from depression. Anyway, so he's saying that he has, like, he said he has ADHD and he has OCD, and he said one other thing. I don't remember what the other thing was, but he started talking about his partner, and then when he was in the jail cell, he had a cellmate who was very physically imposing, and the cellmate was basically saying, if you weren't with someone already, I would want to make you mine. Something like that. And I was just like, Jesus, that's really, like, you know, that's a little bit scary. And then this guy went on to explain that when he was in that, so it was some sort of weird temporary thing. Like, wasn't literally charged with a crime in that specific way, but somehow but the point is, like, he was in jail for a week. That's the time that he did for what he did, which essentially was stealing. It wasn't clear how much he stole, and you're going on this guy's word, but it seems like he stole $1,000 to $5,000 from whatever company he was working for. And to me, it's kind of surprising that you would really even get jail for that at all, because that's sort of like you should be sued, not go to jail. But whatever, he ended up in jail. I think, you know, it wasn't prison. I don't know. But anyway, so he's talking about this guy, and he's so politically correct that I knew that he was talking about a black guy from the way he was describing it, but he didn't want to say that. So I commented he was white. But that's sort of my weird irony thing. But then he responded, he was like, No, I don't want to say anything about the race. You know, he was like that. He was like, I don't want to have this person be identified. And I was like, okay, fair enough. But you could kind of tell from what he was saying. And then he was saying that the guy was bragging to other people. And he was saying that, my cellie, this is what they call them in jail, apparently, or some places, I don't know. So, you know, your cellmate, my cellie. He was saying, oh, my cellie is so beautiful, something like that, about this guy. And it was making him very uncomfortable. And then one day, he was basically asking the tall, imposing guy, who was probably black, was asking if he could give him a back rub. So he starts giving him a back rub. And the guy telling the story on TikTok was basically saying, like, and, you know, what am I supposed to do? Run away? Like, there's no place to run. And I started feeling sorry for this guy, because even though his politics and his sort of worldview are very different from mine, although at the end of the day we all have to live in reality. That's the ironic part about people having these weird divergent views. It's like you can believe the sky is not blue, but it doesn't change the reality. It's a weird type of thing that liberals do. But anyway, all I'm saying is, like, he was quite obviously liberal, But I felt bad for him because I was like, this guy, I don't think this guy should really have had to go to jail and feel possibly that his life was threatened. But anyway, so he's basically saying, like, that he was able to get this guy transferred. I don't know who he complained to or who he talked to, but somehow he was able to get it so that he had the cell to himself and that guy got transferred. See, if I were in a jail situation like that, I would be afraid that the guy would try to get revenge or something for doing that. But I guess you have to, make a mental... You have to do a cost-benefit analysis and sort of determine what's worth it to you or not. And then the guy was released, and so he was telling his story. And he was basically like, I don't ever want to hear anyone call me Selly again. He was like, let me put it that way. I don't ever want to hear the word Selly again referred to me. But he kept referring to his partner, and it was quite obvious. And at some point, because you might be thinking, well, maybe if he's so liberal, that doesn't mean he's gay. Like, he might actually be talking about his female romantic interest. I don't remember why, but it was clear that was not the case and that he was talking about a guy. So anyway, as I was watching this TikTok live, it occurred to me, in a sudden flash of insight, why people have adopted this term partner. Whereas it was never clear before, because liberals won't explain certain things. It's very frustrating because I'm curious as to people's reasons. It's just literally it has nothing to do with wanting to argue with anyone. I'm curious about the reasons that people, like, for instance, you're going to say partner instead of significant other or boyfriend or girlfriend. Why? Why do you want to use the term partner, So I think what it is that some of these people are ashamed. And they're not proud of who they are. I don't think this guy is in a good place in his life. And to be honest, and this is going to piss people off, but I'm not... He didn't seem very gay to me. And yet he's he has a sexual relationship with a guy, his partner, and then you might say, well, it's not up to you to decide who's gay or not. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just saying, like, I think on some level, in this case, this was the path that he went down at some point in his life. He doesn't have to be with a dude. So partner works for him because it obfuscates. Even when he says it, it sounds nebulous, Whereas, it sounds nebulous, and he's able to deflect his own feelings of worthlessness or whatever away from himself, And so he's much more comfortable using this term that's actually confusing because you don't know what the fuck someone's talking about. I knew what he was talking about because he was basically making it pretty clear, and I watched the video for a while, a long enough time to know that he was talking about someone that he was in a romantic relationship with. But other than that, the term partner is nebulous, and you're kind of, liberals can say that this is wrong, this is not true, but how can it not be true? If you say the term partner, it's confusing to anyone. It doesn't matter how fucking liberal or conservative you are. In your mind, you're going, partner. I wonder what he means by that. Unless you already know. And it's sort of an ironic, hypocritical thing on the part of liberals because, and by the way, I'm not even I'm not judging this guy like that. I'm not saying that he's a bad person, but I think what I'm saying is I don't think he's proud of his life. And I don't think he's proud to be with some guy that he's referring to as his partner. The thing with liberals is, and this is a pretty good message generally, but they'll say things like, you should be proud to be black, you should be proud to be gay, you should be proud, all these things that you should be proud of, In other words, the idea is like, well, in the past it was considered like, sometimes they would criminalize homosexuality, or, black people didn't have the same rights. Obviously, at one point they were slaves, but I'm just saying, like, they didn't have the rights that white people had and stuff like that. So it's a way of basically trying to, I guess, reverse, the cultural damage or whatever from the past, and arguably, I don't know, like, I'm not going to go there, but, like, you could argue that, like, there's really not much to reverse at this point, and that a lot of the problems are basically, like, within the community. It's happening now. It's not because white people are bad, but I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm just saying, like, this whole thing of, like, gay pride and pride for other things, like you're Latino and a Puerto Rican Day Parade, whatever. So all that type of stuff that is basically like, and obviously white people, that's a non-starter. Apparently you're not allowed to be, white pride is literally considered like a hate thing. If you are proud to be white, that's considered like you're somehow you're a nationalist or something. So you can't. It's a weird double standard that doesn't even really make sense. Like, if you're a liberal and you think people should be proud to be like what they are, like, don't be ashamed. Like, and this is a good message, like, what if you're deformed or something? Or you have Down syndrome, or you have some sort of syndrome or disability. It's like, you shouldn't walk around feeling bad about yourself, I think pride is a little bit of a strange way to go the other direction. Like, why should you, let's say you have Down syndrome, should you be proud that you have Down syndrome? It's sort of like, well, no, just accept it. But I understand generally what they mean, like, just don't feel bad about it and live your best life despite this whatever problem that you're dealing with, But that's where I think the hypocrisy comes in, because if you're talking about a term like partner that purposely obfuscates whatever you're talking about, why wouldn't you talk about it? Why wouldn't you just say, well, my boyfriend, even though I'm a man? If you're proud of it, then that's what you would say. You wouldn't say partner to try to muddy the waters and sort of like confuse reality, So I almost didn't really want to upload this, but I'm going to upload it anyway, because I don't want to be like overly neurotic about uploading stuff and think that I'm going to get people that I'm like, anyone listening to this knows that I'm not saying anything. This is just my theory, and it just occurred to me. And I think that's what's going on. And it's unfortunate because, in other words, what I think is basically going on is you have a certain liberal subset of people or whatever, and they're basically trying to come up with terminology to confuse a situation so that it distracts from what's actually going on. And again, like, if you're so proud of it, if that's the sort of messaging that you're trying to give, and it is, because ever since I was a kid, this has been going on, where on the media, they'll make fun of gay people or whatever, like in, I don't know what shows, but like, I don't know, Will and Grace, obviously that was considered like progressive, but at the same time, there are all sorts of jokes in the show about, and by the way, I never really watched that show. I just wasn't into it. I don't really like the female star so much. Whatever her name is. I didn't. It was fine, whatever. It's kind of like a show for gay people, I think. But it was fine. Like, it was a well done show, I guess. But they in that show they had all sorts of jokes about gay people. So, and then you go on, and then so I'm saying that was in the late 90s. So then, as you supposedly progress happens, you get shows like Steven Universe. It took me way too long to research that just now because I couldn't remember the name of the cartoon. But anyway, and then I had to figure out the style. I had to look up CalArts style with CalArts cartoon, and I finally found it. So you get a show like that, and it's basically saying, no, you should accept these people and accept this weird type of alternative, way of living, alternative lifestyle. You should accept this, and like not making fun of it and attempting to normalize it and have it be accepted. So what I'm saying is, like, if that's the agenda, and that you should just have it so that a utopia where you can just be whatever you are and people won't what's the word? Discriminate against you for it, then why would you be making up terms that obfuscate the reality and make things more confusing, like partner? Why do you want to do that if you're trying to create a society, and arguably that's a good thing, because you can't really help being gay. It depends. Like, I mean, I know that's kind of contradicts what I just said about the guy, but I'm saying everyone's different, And in my opinion, the way this guy came across was as someone who, for whatever reason, felt really bad about himself, and at some point he ended up being with a dude instead of, and that it wasn't like, he just didn't seem that gay to me. Whereas with other people, it's not really even it's not a choice, and it's like, that's what they are, And if you're someone like the Lindsey Graham, you can pretend, and you can go your whole life and pretend. He never came out, right? And yet everyone kind of assumed that he was gay. Anyway, so that's why I think people that's why I think this term partner has been put into use, is to, I think in their opinion it's sort of a protection mechanism, protecting yourself against people who would discriminate against you because you're gay, or criticize you, or whatever, criticize you for being with a guy instead of being with a girl. So you're going to use the term partner. But the term partner doesn't change anything. And again, I don't know, like, significant other, I guess it's just not confusing enough, because that's gender neutral. But it also sort of implies, like, a monogamous relationship, I think, maybe, and that's another reason. But either way, it's just another stupid term that we're supposed to accept now. But it doesn't really work, because we have this sort of like push for people to use the term Latinx. I think that's how it's pronounced, or Latinx, but I think you were supposed to say Latinx. And it didn't work, because the Hispanic people said, what the fuck is Latinx? And they just said, no thank you. Because in their culture, they don't have this weird identity crisis about different sexes like we seem to have in Western culture. See, I don't think the term partner is really going to take off in the way that they want. I mean, people are using it. But when you say partner, like, I saw this video by Jesse Peterson, and he's amusing because he says things so bluntly, and he was talking to a he was talking to a guy who was liberal. It was a white guy, and the white guy referred to his partner, and Jesse Peterson said, "Is that his name, Jesse Peterson? I think so." He said, "Why are you saying partner? Are you gay?" And the guy was like, "No, I'm not gay. My partner is a woman." And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, when a guy says partner, to me that's like a partner is a gay thing." And the funny thing is, like, you can't get away from that. You can try to normalize something and put it as some sort of standard, but people are not going to accept it, So people can keep using the term partner, but it will never work because of the aspect significant other works. But if you use the term partner, it's nebulous. And so people are like, wait a second, they might not even say it because they're trying to be polite, but internally they'll be going, okay, now I have to figure out if he means romantic partner or a business partner of some kind. And then a liberal would say, well, who gives a fuck? It's all context anyway. Why does it need to be clear? It'll be clear from the context. And my response would be, well, it needs to be changed because language matters, and to the extent that you're trying to communicate anything, you need to use words that actually mean what they're supposed to mean, Anyway, that's all. I hope that wasn't too boring. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So, but to me, it was like kind of a revelation because it had never occurred to me. I didn't understand why we were using this irritating word to replace significant other that worked. And now we have this new term that doesn't work, But it works in the way that some people want it to create confusion. Yeah, but anyway, have a nice day, evening, afternoon, whatever. Thanks for listening.